Hello, everybody, and we are back, baby! Welcome back, one and all, to the Chaos Protocol. No matter if you are tuning in for the first or 100th time, we are Transplanar RPG, an all transgender, people of color-led, dark fantasy, actual play channel telling stories set in an original, non-colonial, anti-orientalist multiverse. This means that we stand against genocide and ethnic cleansing and support all oppressed peoples of the world struggling against injustice, imperialism, and colonization. We must use our voices to build solidarity and fight for the worlds we wish to see. So to that end, free Sudan, free DRC, free Palestine, and free all oppressed peoples of this world. Thank you, one and all, for showing up to support our story. If you are watching this stream right now, you are seeing the live recording of Arc 3 episodes 11 and 12 on Twitch or perhaps YouTube. Before we get started, please allow me to reintroduce my fantabulous cast after our winter hiatus, starting with our incredible guest for this arc, Hamna Shahid.
Hello everyone, my name is Hamna. I use any and all pronouns, and firstly, Happy New Year! I wasn't here for the New Year stream, so this is my first time seeing y'all. I hope that you had a great break and are ready for a new year of chaos. Speaking of chaos, I get the absolute pleasure of playing Rhododendron Rhododendron, who uses they pronouns tonight. And I have the absolute pleasure of getting to talk to Nova. Speaking of which, Val?
Hi everyone, I'm Valiant Dorian. I use he, him, his pronouns. You can find me all on the internet at Valiant Dorian or at Otsa Spearbear. Please enjoy the lovely treasure I just set you on. Tonight, I have the distinct pleasure of playing your favorite sad little meow meow Sayir who uses he, they pronouns. I'm gonna send it on over to the hotshot of the hour. How's it going, old man?
Oh god, hotshot. I don't know. Hi everyone, I'm Kai. I use he, they, and she pronouns. And I am back. It is my singular joy to play Mr. Zanin-esh, who uses he, him pronouns. I'm bouncing on over to our healer?
You said it right. There shouldn't have been a question mark behind that
okay.
at all. Healer, correct. That's what I am. Hi, everyone. I'm Samstar. I use she, they, and the occasional fae pronouns. And tonight, I have the distinct pleasure of playing our healer, Lumiera, who uses she, her pronouns. What's going on, boss?
It's a me, boss. So to start off announcements, a massive thank you to our major sponsors for Arc 3, Explain Trade, Hero Forge, and Frivolous Bear Studios. Hero Forge in particular, I'm never going to stop gushing about this. They're sponsoring us for this arc, so I'm going to show this off, this entire arc. They've added a bunch of cool new features, including these color statuettes. They are the perfect way to show off all of those unique details on your mini that you might have to squint to see on a regular-sized mini. And even if I weren't sponsored by them, I'd honestly probably get one of these just because they're so freaking cool. They're so, look at this level of detail. Ugh, you have to be careful handling them. If you have a display box, perfect thing to put inside one of them. So check out Hero Forge today through our affiliate link at bit.ly/transforge, capital T, capital F. Clicking on it helps us out even if you don't buy anything. Just showing them that we get clicks when we stream, really good thing for us to keep doing the streams. So go click on that link. Click. I'll pass it over to Pamela.
We would also like to thank our Patreon precepts for supporting this stream, this show, this channel. Without you, we could not do this. So thank you so much to Ozra, Brooke, Cassidy, Clay, Elvira, Gridrunner 404, Mark J, Phil, Robert Burke, Rose, Sergeant Danes, Spencer, Squareheart, Taylor, The Bow System, and Zoe. You can join their illustrious ranks by using !Patreon in the chat, and consider pledging either for free or at the $3 tier to start, or you can even gift a subscription to somebody else. Yeah, it's a wonderful gift, actually, because you get a lot of behind-the-scenes content and even monthly discounts on the Transplanar merch store, which you can see Connie is wearing one of the sweaters right now. Speaking of merch, Valiant Dorian.
Happy New Year, Transplaners. And you know what's the best way for you to ring in the new year? Is to get yourself some Transplanar merch. Fans of Transplanar can now find gorgeous apparel, home goods, and accessories designed by my husband, our husband, Max Daisy. Please go and check out all of his cool designs by using !merch in chat or going to transplanarrpg.com. Shop. Our shop is sourced ethically, size inclusive, and made to order with free global shipping. So please go and check it out and get yourself the gift of Transplaner today. Passing it over to Kai.
If you've enjoyed the Chaos Protocol, please consider donating and leaving us a tip. All tips go directly to the performers and will also support our incredible mod team. Your donations help make our work possible. Use !donate in chat and toss a coin to the Twilight Guard. And keep your eyes out for some further future fundraising we'll be doing for those affected by the wildfires in LA this week. Sam.
Thank you, Kai. Well, it is time for everybody's favorite beginning part of every stream, the recap, our first recap of the year. Last time on the Chaos Protocol, Strike Team Nova recover after watching their first duel. They find themselves in their new home base, a 2-bedroom apartment in Midtown, and settle in. The next night, Nova reconvenes at their car Havali, where Ro and Willow have just had a tense meeting. They introduce themselves and Ro begins to share the story of the spider and the Shrike. And that's what you missed last time. Use !recap in chat to read our full written recap document.
Excellent. So now moving on to content warnings about this stream. We're about to get started, y'all. As a reminder, Chaos is a dark fantasy series that may contain content that is triggering for some viewers. So CWs for this session may include fantasy violence, blood, death, grief, trauma, vampirism, neck gore, romance, references to sex, complex character dynamics, brief depictions of floods, food, alcohol, substance use, and mentions of spiders. Use !CW in the Twitch chat to get a look at our content warnings at any time, or I'm sure our mod is dropping those warnings in our YouTube chat if that is where you are watching this from. And now, the title of tonight's episode is From Tenuous Depths in a Coffin of Lead. From Praying Beside the Teeth That Killed Me by Connie Chung. Let's begin. "'Tis but the name that is my enemy.
We are not ourselves. We are our houses.
What is a house? It is not a hand, not the thirst, not eyes, not a face, not any other part belonging to the undead.
Oh, we call it some other name.
What's in a name? That which we call a roe, by any other name would smell as sweet.
So House Lanius would, were they not named for the Shrike. Did you know that the first vampires were born here, on the banks of the Red River? Our forebears tell the tale of when the river swelled with rage and wrath and unyielding spite, thick as viscous blood sweeping away the city at its banks.
That red tide claimed many lives, but in some cases, the claim did not take. 2 men awoke in their graves with a terrible thirst and changed the fabric of Inferno forever.
One was a man named Dianthus the Kran. Fabrics flowed from his loom like rich wine. All who gazed upon his work knew that it was good and divine. They called him the Spider, for his mastery over the weaving of threads, the weaving of words.
The other was a builder named Luban Lanius. They called Ta the Shrike. Dianthus and Luban found one another in that apocalypse, and they found others like them, those the river had claimed and spat back out again. Together, Dianthus and Luban began to rebuild their lost city, guiding the others who came back for their home. Dianthus's grand artistic visions and Luban's skill with hammer and muscle helped this reborn Inferno flourish, as did the reborn who inhabited it. To commemorate their accomplishments and their friendship, They constructed a noble archway in the heart of their new city to serve as a threshold for the glimmering river that had gifted them their mysterious immortality.
But the Shrike was not satisfied with Tada gifts from the river. As nights turned to months, turned to years, he grew jealous of Dianthus. How well he taught the other undead, how he found a name for them. Vampire. How he wove a tapestry with ideas and rules that all could follow. Lupin wanted to be the only one who built. He could not bear the ease with which Dianthus made this new world his craft, his skill, his art. One night, under the archway, Lupin ambushed Dianthus. Tada teeth tore into his veins as he tried to bleed him of his unrunning blood. But the strong and mighty spider did not succumb. The two vampires fought fiercely and viciously until the sun rose and all their friendship had turned to ash.
Both of them were forced to retreat, but that was not the end of their strife.
For the treacherous and envious Lupin planned his next attack soon after.
Dianthus would bear the scars of his former friend's attacks for the rest of his own life.
As their battles continued, Dianthus turned to the crimson tapestry he wove to protect him. He added a third and final edict. Thou shalt settle thy disputes through formal duels.
But it was too late. The fuse between the spiders and the Shrikes was lit, and all of Inferno burned. Outright war raged for decades until it ended the same place it began, underneath that tragic archway. Dianthus and Luban fought and fought and fought until sunrise claimed them and their bodies turned to ash. Since that fateful night, there have been times of unsteady peace in Inferno, but not reconciliation. Never reconciliation.
House Lanius mimics the treason of their founder. To this night, they refuse to apologize or even acknowledge what their forebear had done. A hatchet cannot be buried again if it was never excavated in the first place. And so, the spiders do what we must. We caution our children, and our children's children, to never trust a Shrike. They are jealous and treacherous vampires who will not hesitate to burn their enemies and themselves in the light of a dying sun if it means their petty spite shall be quenched. And so I say to you, the four of you, never trust a Shrike, lest you become the thorn that they impale on.
This conflict goes very deep, far back beyond any of us standing here, it seems.
Sayre says, quietly acknowledging the story. He is piecing together all of these different aspects of the politics between Lanius and Drakkar. And they do make sense. And as he ponders on his next question, he kind of just fixates on Ro to gauge this reserved person's feelings, emotions, the history of their ancestor laid bare. What bubbles up in Ro's heart? Their face, even.
There is a small, very, very small vibration from the center of Ro's web that you can feel because you're looking for it. You can tell that there is a seething anger beneath this tale that Ro is telling you. It's personal. It is so deeply personal.
And
though
Sayer knows personal. That's something he understands very well.
And though they try, they're not very good at hiding it.
Zynon spent the whole tale looking between that beautiful blade and Rhododendron, thinking about the duel, and that someone who would hang such a beautiful blade and venerate such a weapon did not use it to fight. And as repaints this storied history of Inferno, he begins to mark out the story, the people, names and faces that he can match to what he's already seen, what he's already experienced, and what he's heard from specifically Seir about House Lanius. And he sees the distance and thinks about the Mayday call that brought them here, and wonders how these two threads tie together, because that's what the mission is for. A Shrike, and now this spider. This spider specifically. What does Rhododendron want with the Shrike? And he mulls this over around and just nods and listens and kind of kisses his teeth a few times, thinking. It's quite a tale. Old blood.
Old. You're correct. This goes back so much further than you or me or even Yara or my mother Willow. Goes back so much further, right to the founding, the beginning of our houses, of Inferno even. And were it not for House Lanius, perhaps Inferno would already be somewhere better, more honest.
So
Where
how
does,
does this
Go on.
So how does this Ren Shimizu fit into all this?
Ren was... It's an extremely unfortunate thing that happened. Ren was my assistant and pledged to House the Krar. We took care of them. We always take care of the spiders. Unfortunately, Ren got into a fight with another artist, I believe, at the ICMA, and so, well, it didn't end very well.
A duel, you mean?
I don't think so. A duel often requires formality. Spectators, it is a formal affair. What happened to Ren was... well, it wasn't formal.
So, what happens then? The duel's part of the tapestry, right? If artists, vampires, don't adhere to that, what happens? What about the fate of this other artist? Ren died, right? Was killed?
She did. She was. As far as we know. But we don't know who did it. And without that information, well, nothing can be done.
Well, then it seems like we need to find that thread. If there's anything that I've learned in the past few months, any pulling of a string from a tapestry can unweave the entire thing. So, we find that thread, put it back in place, and seal it shut.
What about our assassin? That's a thread that we can't pull on anymore, per se, but where does that lead? Why them?
Jamie was upset at House Thakrar for not protecting Ren enough. After all, Ren was pledged to our house and was killed. So I can see where that resentment comes from. But Jamie's was a unpracticed, rough passion, one that they let get the best of them.
Jamie, who was unsworn, right?
Unsworn.
Just a freelancer in this town.
No house claimed Jamie.
Interesting. And Zainin looks to Sayer, knowing that Sayer knows that there's more to that, and holds that thought right at the front of his mind, but does not say it aloud.
Sayer meets your gaze. There's a little tiny lip curl from this confident young man when he sees that you're looking at him and he's looking at you. And he clears his throat and says, well, Lumiera is right. There's a loose thread, and unfortunately for House Thakrar, even though you are placed in this position, there is a real desire from House Lanius to understand what exactly happened. And until they find what they deem to be a satisfactory answer, I don't know what they'll do next. They didn't seem, like I mentioned, supportive of Jamie's actions. But I do not know Lanius very well. But your house does. Centuries, even.
Ro smiles, this practiced smile, leans over across their desk. Their hands touch the blade that is in front of them. One hand on the hilt, the other resting gently on the blade. As they look at you, when anything happens to House Thakrar, you will always find a Shrike behind it. That I can guarantee you. Do you not find it interesting that House Lanius is so fixated on Ren, someone who is not a part of their house?
Nova, I have a question for you. When Rose says that, how calm are each of you able to keep your faces? Because you all know from Sayer that Ren was a Lanius informant. So Ro is straight up not telling the truth here. Are you all able to keep your faces schooled?
Zainin is working really hard too. It has
Okay.
this entire time.
Sayer feels like a little cat that has a rat scuttering nearby. He feels like a hunter that has some level of understanding of what's going on here. Not all the pieces, but enough to be fixated and intrigued by it. He kind of wants to see this all play out. So a lot of his expression, I wouldn't say he schools any sort of like surprise or anything. He's not surprised. He understands that there's political machinations, and he's just doing what he has been trained to do by the Great Huntress, which is listen, pay attention, predict. And that is what he is doing. And he does have a small smile as he hears he almost matching Ro's energy a little bit of like, listen, isn't this so interesting? A smirk. I look what I am prepared to do, a smirk. And this is an energy that Sayer is matching of like, yeah, I can see that.
What about
but
Lumiera?
Sorry.
Not only is Lumiera completely calm and straight-faced, she actually makes herself comfortable wherever she's sitting at, kind of slouches back into the chair and crosses her right ankle over her left knee, and her eyes narrow almost to slits as they focus so innately on Ro. Their breathing patterns, if there's any hitch in what's going on. I actually have a gift. Gift of the Fang. I can get a +1 to study or survey. When I study someone for an uninterrupted and extended period of time, I uncover a small secret about them.
Oh, okay.
However, I will say, after I use this move, I can't do it again against them, and you will be inoculated to my analysis from this point on and learn how to guard against me. So I'm going to use this now.
R.I.P.
What's Ro really laying underneath there?
Okay, so you said small secret, right?
Mm-hmm.
As you study Ro, you can see that you've seen Ro now with a sliver of emotion teetering underneath a practiced mask. You've seen Ro lose it completely. You've also seen them hold their own in composure. You've seen quite a lot of different facets, faces, masks of Ro in the short time that you've met Rem. And I think from having compared all of those different pieces together, you can see that there is something crucially missing as Ro talks about Ren and answers these questions, and that's any sort of feeling or emotion. There's no grief when Ro talks about Ren. You would expect that somebody who belongs to the house, you saw Ro kill someone else to defend the house. And yet when talking about Ren, another spider who had been killed out of the Crimson Tapestry, Ro doesn't really seem to care very much. You talk about pulling on this thread, this loose thread of finding an assassin, and they're not that interested.
And I think that's all you get from Lumiera in that regard, then, is one eyebrow curiously quirked. And she just sits further back in her seat and nods. Fiending. I was gonna say like fiending that she's following along in the story.
Yinghe looks confused. They look uncertain. Their hands are twisting all over their fingers. Their knees are kind of rubbing together. They're looking from side to side. And if a vampire could sweat, they would be sweating right now. In fact, a bead of it kind of rolls down their temple and disappears into their modern hanfu. And before they can help themselves, they blurt out, "I'm sorry, did you know, Ro?"
And Ro's eyes, those yellow eyes, dart to Yinghe and fixate on him. No, what?
That, maybe Ren was, and they glance left. Yeah.
And Sayer immediately steps forward and it's just like, that Ren is somehow captured House Lanius' attention to a very great degree.
And Ro looks over at you, Sayer, and then looks back at Yinghe. What were you really about to say?
But now that Sayer has cut in, Yinghe seems to be able to intuitively take his lead and understand what he was trying to do there and says, "Nothing. Exactly what Sayer was going to say. I'm just new in the city and new to being a vampire, so it's taking me a second to catch up to all the politics.
Of course. It's hard. And Ro leans back into her chair, crossing their legs together, taking on this affected, casual air to themselves.
Zynon intercedes, seeing the change in tone. Speaking of the politics, how does Ula, Kuotun, Huyan, is there another one? There's a lot of people in this town. How do they all relate to specifically you and Lanius?
Well, there are 5 major houses in Inferno, and being new to vampirism and new to Inferno, looking particularly at Yinghe and Thayer as they say that, I think it's important that you know who to trust. And who can trust you, after all. House Ula, you may hear them referred to as the Serpents. Well, they are the ones that are responsible for... Well, if you're a religious sort of the faithful, you would want to go to them. They handle everything that has to do with... they call it magic, or some call it magic anyway, but... if you believe in such a thing, House Ula can handle that for you. The other 2 major houses, well, one you've already met, actually, Mr. Ash. House Kuotun, the Bears. The one you pissed off.
Familiar. Yeah.
Yeah, well,
Oh, fun.
they
Poke
are
the
responsible for feeding the entirety of Inferno. And then there is House Huyan, the Foxes. Smart ones, clever ones. They are responsible for knowledge gathering, research, academic types. Them. Actually, House Huyan, I do advise that if you have time, maybe go and talk to them. They're good friends of House Thakrar, and so worthy of your trust. But
So
I will
your
say,
relations with all of them seem square, other than Lanius?
more or less, the houses we keep to our different niches, our roles within Inferno. We don't encroach upon one another, and we help each other out. House Lanius, of course, doesn't seem to appreciate the help that House Thakrar is trying to offer everyone.
The tapestry.
Exactly. If there are no rules to abide by, if there's nothing to govern our communities, then, well, then we repeat history, and people die when they shouldn't.
Yeah.
We don't want that. So,
No.
in what way can we be of service to you?
Well, allow me first to patch up everything between you and Anugata.
Much appreciated.
I can figure out a way for you to meet Anugata and to get into her good graces. That'll help with the bears at the very least, and truly that will be helping House Thakrar as well, because we do not want to poke the bear.
Again.
Beyond that, it seems that you have some sort of relationship with House Lanius, whatever that might be, as complicated as that might be. I encourage you to hold that with a grain of salt. And if you are so inclined to help House Thakrar, well, it would be good for us to know if there were any threats that we had to be concerned about. The Shrikes are underhanded. Knowledge is good for us.
Nothing immediately. And any concern for any relationship that I might have, I don't. I don't have a relationship with Lanius. I walked into the union meeting. I heard what I heard. I heard a threat to the little spider. And I ended that threat with the little spider alongside Nova and you. That is the full entirety and extent of that relationship. In terms of what they plan next, I've also offered that they have a great fixation with Ren Shimizu. And that they believe that they were murdered. And that they believe that it ought to be investigated. That's the extent of what I can imagine their next steps to be. Is to dig that further. So you're saying the truth.
That. And I appreciate that. I will say, though, that your scent can be a little deceiving. So when you go about Inferno, I recommend that you rid yourself of it.
Heard. I shall do so.
Excuse me. You mentioned that House Ula is the house that does magic stuff. Would they also be able to help someone if they were, theoretically, let's say an aspiring magician, but the magic is not working the way they thought it would?
I'm not very good at all of that, but yeah. House Ula, the serpents, should be able to help you with that. If you go to the temple, the abbot should be able to see you. When you speak to the abbot, though, and don't take this the wrong way, but I would advise you to be a bit more respectful in your interactions with them. They are older than everyone in Inferno, including the current leaders of all of the houses. They know a lot, and they have a lot to offer.
Oh, okay. Sorry, no disrespect was ever intended. Just ignorance. I promise. But that's noted, and I'll make sure to conduct myself properly. I'm actually quite familiar with how to, common courtesy in temples and whatnot.
What kind of magic do you aspire to?
Well, it seems like in Inferno it would be laughable to think people can teleport. Or throw blades of shadow. That doesn't... I mean, theoretically, right?
And Ro quirks an eyebrow at that, because they have never heard of anybody who can do these kinds of things before. But these strangers aren't from here, and they seem to have come from a place that they're not willing to talk about. So I think Ray is suspending rare disbelief to a healthy degree, listening to Yinghe. And more than anything, I think is like intrigued and amused by it. And so they nod. They don't shut Yinghe down or anything. Well, I suppose stranger things have happened. After all,
Yes.
Vampires didn't exist until the Red River made it so.
It seems to be. Thank you for your insights. And, as far as trustworthiness goes, is it safe to assume that House Ula is to be trusted? That House Thrakar is on good terms with him as well, like they are with Huyen?
Good is a relative term, I would say, Yinghe. But House Ula can be trusted as far as faith goes. Let's say that.
I see. Okay. Thanks. I think I know where I'm gonna go next.
Sayer looks behind at Yinghe and feels a little pang deep in his chest. It sounds like they're struggling. And that pang in his chest blooms to worry and concern and something he would like to help with. He just kind of sits there fiddling with the red thread on his finger and turns back to Rhododendron, where Rem is sitting at the main table in this room, office.
And Ro stands up, pushing their chair back, their hands on the beautiful wooden desk in front of them. And they look to each of you in turn, giving each of you the care and attention that you deserve as guests of House Thakrar. And they say, for thanks for helping the house, for helping the spiders, and to help you in whatever it is that you wish to do next, I would like to offer you the opportunity to use the House Thakrar name in your activities. Believe me, it will help you to gain access to information, locales that you may otherwise not have if a house does not claim you. I hope that you will use this information to benefit not only House Thakrar, but also Inferno.
You said helping the house helps you, right?
Of course.
And I'm in your debt, so whatever helps. And Zynon looks Ro straight in the eyes, unwavering, unafraid that he might reveal something, because there's no lie when he shows that he does want to specifically help Rhododendron. The reason is not plain, but he does want to help. He believes it's the right thing to do.
I have another question, if you wouldn't mind answering it, Rhododendron. Is there anyone among the Shrikes who might be known as just the Shrike? I remember from the bloodbath when all of the leaders of each house were named, the leader of Lanius was referred to as the Builder, not the Shrike.
And Ro steels themselves for a moment. Their hands already on the desk clench it a little bit tighter, and their jaw tightens. Where have you heard that title?
All of you have different animals associated with you. The spiders, the bear. Surely logic follows that there would be the Shrike. No?
Not every house follows this naming convention for the members of their houses, but logical. I think you'll get to know the Shrikes a little bit more as you make nice with all of the houses, gather your information.
So that's a no. There isn't just a Shrike.
And Ro looks you up and down, Zynon, calculating, trying to ascertain what it is that you know, the extent to which you have any sort of knowledge about House Lanius in this regard. And after a very uncomfortable silence, Ro squares their shoulders. There is a Shrike. But if you ever meet them, you'll wish you hadn't.
Noted. So it isn't the Builder.
No. The Builder, have you noticed, is a Dithi.
Mm-hmm.
Leader
Quite a
of House
presence.
Lanius.
She's, quite scary.
Yeah.
Lumiera, it's your phone.
My apologies. 1 second.
You check your phone and you see that you have a notification, a reminder for an event that's about to occur in 30 minutes. The title of the event is Psych 601 with Professor Toyin Ifueko.
Well, my apologies, Nova. But it does seem as if I'll be getting acquainted with Halsuian a bit faster than I anticipated. Apparently, I have a psychology class at Inferno University in about 30 minutes, so...
Oh,
All right.
will you be okay?
Of course. I'll catch up with you
Okay.
later.
Yeah.
Okay.
See you back
be-
at the house.
Be safe, Lumiera.
Enjoy your
Always.
lecture. And for all of you, if you'd like to talk about the Shrike, we can meet back here later, once you have completed all of your tasks. And hopefully the other houses don't see you as a nuisance.
I will work to alleviate that particular reputation.
Understood. I'll be very respectful to the abbot, the venerated and eldest abbot.
Mm-hmm.
I don't cause problems.
You do not.
And Ro will walk over to the door of the office and will open it and escort all of Nova out of her office and into the rest of the Takrar Haveli.
Mm-hmm. As everyone's going out, does anyone have any final lingering comments or questions they'd like to ask the spider before you're dispersing to the wind? Okay. Yinghe has one. They're one of the last to come out of the office, but they pause at the threshold and square their feet back to look at you. Puppy dog. Yeah, they bark. They bark like a dog. No. Surprise, they're a werewolf. Yinghe turns back to you, Rhododendron, and they say, like, they're not sure if they should say this, but then some steel within them compels the words out of their mouth. Is there anything in particular that House Drakar wants? You mentioned Kuwatun wants to feed people, Ula wants to guide people magically and spiritually. What about Drakar?
House Takrar wants to unite Inferno. It's not our official mandate or edict. We are responsible for entertaining the city. But we have bigger ambitions than that. We see a brighter future for Inferno. And I hope that you'll help us reach it.
I see. That does sound nice. Thank you, Rhododendron.
Thank you, Yinghe.
The shadow nods and goes. And strike Team Nova as you round the corner back into the courtyard again, leaving Ro on the threshold. We linger on the spider's face. As soon as these newcomers vanish, what emotion settles over you?
It is unease. There is a lot of missing pieces to this new group that has shown up. The four of them know things that they shouldn't, having just arrived in Inferno. They aren't entirely forthcoming about their own backgrounds, motives, which Ro doesn't entirely mind. I mean, the spider is used to working in affectations and implications. But there is something unsettling about this new group of people that Ro isn't quite sure whether they can trust them or not. Whether these people are truly here to help them and House Thakrar, or whether they are here to dismantle everything that Ro has worked so hard for.
Well, either way, Ro, does it really matter? What matters is that you have a task you must get done. The obstacles are inconsequential. They've always been. That's always been our house's way. Perhaps these 4 will help. Perhaps these 4 will hinder. No matter what, you'll be able to use them if they're useful, and eliminate them if they're not.
After all, blood comes first. Always has. Always will.
Strike Team Nova. You've rounded the corner, you've re-entered this flourishing, blooming, flowering courtyard. The waxing moonlight pours in through this open sky above your heads, painting everything in a silvery hue. You have a moment by yourselves to touch base before you split off.
Ray is lying.
You took the words directly from my mouth. And if they're not lying directly, they're lying by omission.
And they're guarded. There's a secret.
Guarded as all get out. Oh no, there definitely is one. Did you notice when they were speaking about Ren Shimizu?
Hmm.
Mm.
What? Did I miss something?
When we talk about Sing,
Mm-hmm.
there's pain, there's hurt, there's loss, there's grief behind it, remorse. For someone who was supposed to be as important to House Thakrar as they were, Ray showed nothing.
Oh.
Nothing.
Jamie Shimizu is a lot of things. Reckless, headstrong, fueled primarily by their most surface level emotions and driven by grief and anger. They're not a liar.
So, do you all think that maybe Aditi's suspicions were right? That, maybe Willow or Rhododendron is the one that killed Ren?
I do think that I am far more inclined to believe that Ro had something to do with Ren's death, especially with Lumiera's assessment.
I'm gonna have to say the exact same. If they don't have anything to do with it, they for damn sure know who did.
Especially for a house that has been historically dealt with a lot of betrayal of some sort. They seem pretty blasé about a artist that might have murdered one of their own, an assistant to the air spider. So I don't know.
I was just thinking about that duel. How honor was so important following that crimson tapestry. And yet somehow, if they are attached to that death, that secretive murder, there's a different side to them that we have not seen yet.
They kept saying blood comes first. And Lumiera starts pacing back and forth. Pacing back and forth as she's thinking. Blood comes first. Now, I don't know about you, but my entire thing was uniting Inferno through House Thakrar, and then found out that someone who was supposed to be in allegiance with us was actually working with our mortal enemy. There'd be a lot of animosity there.
But
Enough
wouldn't
for-
Rhododendron just challenge Ren to a duel?
that would seem to be the most. I mean, I don't know if the rest of you agree, but that would seem to place them more above board based on the Crimson Tapestry. So unless there's something about that particular, about Ren and about that whole situation, that even the formality of a duel can't solve, but only an assassination. I mean, when do you assassinate someone? To silence them, right?
Exactly.
Jamie.
You can't do it the right way.
Yeah.
Like, if you say don't want to speak about a complicated something. Something was complicated about our Shrike. And we know there's a tie between them.
Lumiera starts pacing back and forth again, deep in thought.
Maybe we can use this opportunity of meeting some of these other houses.
Yeah.
Figure out what their perspectives are on this. It might give us a better picture.
I agree. But we should probably try to be more, subtle about it than I was back there.
It's okay.
You know,
It's your
word
first
might
time.
get around that we're poking around. Yeah, sorry about that, you guys.
No, it's okay.
More than fine.
I'm still
Okay.
learning. But I'll do better next time, I promise.
You're fine, Yinghe.
World's
Okay.
different when you can't cling to the shadows, right? It's alright.
Yeah. Thanks, Zynon. Thanks, Lumiera. And thanks, Seer. I miss clinging to the shadows. The shadows are nice. They're cold and they're quiet. Moon, too. I like the moon. The shadows feel different here. They're not as alive. They don't talk.
So, we all have our assignments. I only
They
have
don't talk.
Hmm?
The shadows.
They talked back home. Not with
yes.
words, obviously.
Mm-hmm. Sorry.
In song
Just
and theme.
that's lovely.
So we all
Mira, you were saying
have our assignments. I have
Yes.
class in a few.
I gotta go make nice
Zynon,
with the
you
bear.
have to clean up your mess, please.
Yeah.
And
It's not my fault
Lumiera,
she left her bike running.
you and your sticky fingers could have just left it, but yet here we are again. Repeat of sea,
In my
heaven,
defense,
and repeat
I
of the
thought
wild sea.
she
And
was calling me.
Yinghe, Seer.
Mm-hmm.
Lumiera just turns her attention away from Zynon at the moment, right back
He takes
onto
the not
mission.
subtle hint.
The jackhammer of a hint.
right back into formation again. Okay. You two are digging into dangerous grounds. I need you both safe.
I'll go with you, huh?
Thank you.
Yeah, I guess that would be okay. Obviously, I'm going to meet the Abbot. I will be more subtle, but hopefully we'll learn more about everyone else's perspectives about this feud between the
Yeah.
Shrikes and the spiders.
And find out more about your magic, right?
Yes, it's
Lumiera
different
kinda-
here.
Tenses at that before directing her attention right back into Yinghe, staring him directly into his eyes. Sometimes, when things are sealed, we have to work our way around them to fix our problems. Maybe sometimes, magic is not the answer.
Okay.
Just be safe.
Sayer narrows his eyes at Lumiera. What a truly uncharacteristic thing for Lumiera to say out loud.
Yeah.
Yinghe also looks confused because they also don't think it's characteristic of you, but they nod. I appreciate you looking out for me, Lumiera, and
Yes.
same for you. I know that Huyen and Trakar seem to be allies, but, well, if we can't trust Trakar, we probably can't trust Huyen either, right? Even though we're supposed to be helping Rhododendron.
I think we trust each other. That's what
To
we
be
have
completely honest, I will trust knowledge before most other things.
Mm.
So, I have
Speaking
a
of
lecture to
knowledge,
get to.
you have a class to get to.
Yeah.
Yes. And
Yes.
you and Zidon looks to Seer have what's ahead of you. What is here to help with? And he glances fleetingly over to Yinghe before taking a deep breath, straightening himself up, spinning around. And I'm gonna go to a diner or something.
Yes. Strike Team Mova, you split off. Sayer and Yinka go off in one direction, Lumiera another, and Zynon the third. Before we pan to black on this, Lumiera, on your way out of the Haveli, as you go from this inner courtyard to an outer courtyard before you hit the street again, you hear a voice broach the shadows in a little vestibule next to you. Lumiera, right? And stepping out of the shadows is the littlest spider, whose life you saved. Yara.
What
Hey.
are you? You okay?
Listen, two things. Yeah, I'm fine. Just two things, and you didn't hear either of them from me, okay? Thing number one, just a thank you again for saving my life, or whatever. And as a gesture of thanks, I guess some would call me a musician. I prefer whatever. I just think labels are trite. But either way, I have like an album release party or something in a few weeks, and here. And they hold out a card, an invitation to this album release party. Kind of shove it in your hands. You're invited, and so are your friends if you wanted them to come. You know, it's gonna be pretty low key.
Thank you. I will make sure that this gets to the rest of my friends, and I'm glad you're safe. And Lumiera kind of like
Yeah.
opens up her spell book that sits on her like off of her chain and just like kind of tucks it into it and closes it.
Mm-hmm. Yara kind of nods. You don't get anything from her expression except the vague sense that she's pleased, even though her face does not betray it. And then she says, a bit more seriously, the second thing, listen, I don't know what my sibling wanted to talk to you about in there, but just tread carefully. Okay? You see, the thing about spiders is you think you know where they are because you're looking at them, but what you don't realize is that you've stepped inside a web that you can't see. So just be careful.
I'll heed the warning. And Lumiera kind of smirks, nods her head curtly, and then turns very sharply on her heel to her class. While texting both Sayer and Zynon at the same time, letting them know what just happened in this interaction.
You send off the text, goes off into the internet. And we pan off away from the Haveli, and we hold on that almost full moon. And we're gonna go to break. Thank you all so much for tuning in so far. We'll be back in just about 10 minutes for whatever Strike Team Nova splitting off to do. I'm very excited to meet the other leaders of Inferno. Hang tight for a word from our sponsors and our adorable break screen. We love you so much. Bisho, Bisho. what time it is. It's sponsor Connie time with a word from Hero Forge. Hero Forge has officially leveled up with kit bashing. When you become a pro member, you can place up to 20 more items anywhere on one of your Blorbos with their own independent scaling, rotation, and movement. You can make your character look exactly as they should, even if the specific clothing or accessory option isn't available at the base level. You just have to get a little creative. And because I love you, Transplaners, here's a special sneak peek at a kit bashed version of Oblivion. Just look at those wings and that base. This would not be possible without the power of kit bashing. The combinations are literally endless, and you can print your kit bashed Blorbos as plastic minis, standees, digital STL files, or even Hero Forge's brand new color statuettes. Color statuettes are twice the size of a regular mini, and just look at this. I mean, look at how massive this is, and especially in comparison to a regular mini, you can really get into all the nooks and crannies and details that wouldn't be as apparent on a regular sized mini. Just look at how Oblivion dwarfs Oka here. And also, if you're a GM, consider busting out one of these bad boys during a boss fight to really get your players shaking in their boots. Oblivion agrees. Unlock the true power of Hero Forge with a Hero Forge Pro subscription starting at $3.99 a month. Get in there and start creating at bit.ly/transforge. Now, let's get back to the show. Or more likely, just more of the waiting room. Trust in her will. Hello, transplaners, and welcome back to the back half of Arc 3, episodes 11 and 12 of Transplant RPGs, The Chaos Protocol. We're going to hop right back into the session, but a reminder of content warnings for this episode. The Chaos Protocol is a dark fantasy series that may contain content that is triggering for some viewers. So content warnings for this back half may include fantasy violence, blood, death, grief, trauma, vampirism, neck gore, romance, references to sex, complex character dynamics, brief depictions of floods, food, alcohol, and substance use, and mentions of spiders. So if you're in the Twitch chat, you can use !CW to get a look at these content warnings at any time. And I believe our mods will be copy and pasting these content warnings every now and then in the YouTube chat if that is where you are viewing this. Otherwise, let's get right back into the session. Strike Team Nova, welcome to Downtime. In Court of Blades, between your errands and moments of free play, your coterie spends its time at liberty, attending to personal matters, various needs, and side projects. These comprise your downtime activities. Each of you gets 2 downtime activities. During times of war, you only get 1. That's not relevant right now. Each additional activity beyond 2 costs 1 influence, of which your coterie currently has 0. Also not relevant right now. Downtime activities may include rolls, just like regular actions, and you get to take a +1d to your pool if a friend is helping you in this downtime activity. After you roll, you can spend influence to improve the result level by 1, but again, none of you have any influence, so don't worry about that yet. As for the downtime activities you have access to, there are 7 of them, and they are: 1. Slake your thirst. This lets you reduce your thirst at the risk of overindulging. 2. Acquire assets. This lets you gain access to the resources of your house. But given that Nova doesn't formally claim a house yet, this activity is barred from you for now. 3. Start or advance a long-term project. This covers a wide variety of projects like researching a ritual, investigating someone's secret, gaining someone's trust, etc. 4. Reduce exposure. This means you go around Inferno making amends, hiding evidence, or silencing gossip to reduce your coterie's exposure track. Looking at you, Zynon. 5. Recover. Because you are vampires, you automatically reduce 1 tier of physical harm at the end of each session, which all of you have been doing up until this point, as long as you're not in combat. But if you'd like to reduce social harm or expedite the recovery of your physical harm, you can perform this downtime activity. 6. Train. This lets you gain XP. And finally, 7. Perform a ritual. This is a special downtime activity, as magic in Inferno is not what you're used to, of course. But if you ever find yourself wanting to learn or perform a ritual, this is the activity to undertake. Now, before we learn who's doing what and when, I'd like to introduce a very special long-term project that is shared by your coterie right now. This project is called The Fate of Inferno. Like every long-term project, it has a project clock, which tracks its progress. Once all wedges on this clock are ticked, the project is complete. Typically, a long-term project clock spans 4 to 6 wedges. This one has 16. You can tick wedges on this clock by meeting or deepening your bonds with important people in Inferno, make note of this, and by learning new or important information about Inferno. Simple enough, right? You can tick this clock during free play, during an errand, or during downtime as a dedicated downtime activity to advance a long-term project. When all 16 wedges are ticked, then the fate of Inferno will be revealed. That's all. Now, let's get started with Zynon. The Lazy Bear Pub and Grill is an old diner on the fringes of the culinary district that looks torn straight from a 70s newspaper clipping. Inside, we see tiled floors, plaster walls, wooden booths, and the sweet, sweet stench of hand-rolled cigars. The bell above the door sings as you saunter in. You see a handful of Twilight customers huddling in booths or crouching on stools at the bar, nursing mugs of strong tea and picking over perfectly fried youtiao. There are vampires here, too. You can tell instantly, like something igniting in your blood. One of them catches your eye, an older black stud sitting in a corner booth. Her dark skin burns with a warm undertone. She has a medium-length frohawk that protrudes above a black bandana around her forehead, gashed with red designs to resemble claw marks. The rolled-up sleeves of her denim jacket reveal muscled arms covered in colorful tattoos. She has a slit in her eyebrow and wears these long, loose-fitting corduroy cargo pants. This woman has cracked open a window and is smoking a cigarette. She's reading a newspaper called the Inferno Daily, and aside from a brief glance in your direction with faded gray eyes, she doesn't really seem to care about you. As for Anugata, you don't see her here immediately, but you do hear signs of her. Somewhere in the back, presumably from the kitchen, you hear old fuzzy speakers blasting a hip-hop song with a lot of bass and a lot of drums. This is where Ro told you the meeting would be set up, of course. So, how do you make your presence known in the Lazy Bear Pub and Grill?
Zynon saunters in, and what would normally be his very even cowboy swagger, there is a slight hitch to it, since part of the reason he's even here is because he may or may not have been hit by and or hit a vehicle in the high-speed chase that culminated in damage to Anugata's bike. So he unevenly cowboy swaggers in. Definitely looks too long at the person in the corner, removes his hat, inclines his head to her first, and seeing the disinterest, turns to the counter. And Connie, I have a question for you. Is there a bell?
There is not.
Zynon sidles up to the counter, puts his hat flat down on the counter, risking whatever might be there on the surface of it, getting on the brim of his beloved hat, and he just sits and looks to see if maybe he can see a sign of life.
So this diner setup, there's no one at the bar. There's like one other person at the end of the bar who's just like hovering over a mug of very strong coffee and doesn't look at you. But you can see kind of like an open window into the kitchen where the music is coming from. You see some like steam rising, and then sure enough, you see a figure cut across the window holding a plate of a deliciously constructed sandwich. Anugata. She has a well-fitting white t-shirt on underneath an apron, and is just wearing these like dark wash jeans and these work boots. And she kind of calls out, "Hey, I got someone's club sandwich here," and then her eyes fall on you.
Howdy.
You know, I was
Not my
expecting you to be here because of that text I got from Rhododendron. And no, this is not your sandwich. And you're not getting anything on the house. Not tonight, not ever.
Understood.
You see a regular stand up from a booth, looking kind of furtively between the two of you, and go behind the bar themselves and grab the sandwich. There's like no server here. So they grab the sandwich and they bring it back to the booth themselves and they start eating it. Anu kind of leans her elbow on the kitchen counter, looks over at you. So, I assume you're here to make amends.
I'm here to do whatever you think is making nice.
You know, let's play a little game. How much do you think I had to spend on repairs to Moxie because of what you did? How many yen? Come on. Name a figure.
2,000?
Are you insulting me? Do you mean to imply that Moxie's parts only cost 2,000 apiece?
Listen.
Try 7, pretty boy.
Sure. What can I do to double that?
What can you do indeed? Let me think. She makes a big show of kind of swinging her arms, and she goes out of the kitchen. She leaves the kitchen, comes around, and stops behind the counter. So now there's just the bar between the two of you. Crosses huge muscled arms over a massive chest and says, "Kiss my boots."
And Zynon isn't looking away because he's ashamed. He flushes just a little bit of what you might call a vampire's blush as this twice dead man peels himself away from the bar, leaving his hat behind. And that uneven gait walks around the edge where that person went around to go get their sandwich.
Mm-hmm.
And Zynon stops directly in front of Anugata. Has a very brief flash of an actual smile before he, groaningly, gets down on the ground, laughs a little, and doesn't even think about where the boots have been, how many things might have spilled on them in this kitchen alone. Plants a not inexperienced hand on the ground and kisses Anugata's boot.
Huh. Oh, you gangly fuck. Get up.
And Zynon rolls back onto his heels and then stands pretty promptly.
I can't
I'm here to
believe you
make
actually
good.
did that.
I've done worse.
I can tell. Huh. I wonder what else I could put you through. But I'm not gonna yank your chain much longer. I've got a few questions for you, Zynon Ash. I don't think that kiss is enough to make good on Moxie's repairs. You're gonna need to do a lot more than that before I'm satisfied. Questions first, though. You're muted.
Zynon stands up. All right. And instead of going back around to sit in the chair, leans against the counter like he belongs there.
Question number 1. What's your deal with House Thrakar? You working for them?
Trying to make good. Rhododendron is doing me a favor by squaring things with you and Diablo.
Seems like it. You claim them now?
No, not meaningfully.
So a little trial run, huh? See if you're gonna replace their little errand girl, Ren Shimizu.
That isn't my intention. I'd be curious to know what you know about Ren Shimizu.
I'd be curious to know if Rhododendron's gonna dress you up like her too. Put your hair in a ponytail.
I promise it doesn't look that good.
I don't know. I can kind of picture it. I see. Alright, question number 2. What's with your crew?
We're new in town. Close-knit. But trying to figure this place out.
4 brand new vampires rolling into town, saving the littlest spider at a bloodbath, which, by the way, very difficult invitation to secure, kicking up a stink. So what's your angle? You want to be big players in this town? Think cozying up to the spiders is gonna get you to the top?
I don't have those kinds of aspirations. Just looking out for me and mine. Security, you know. Little connection here, little ingratiating there.
The thing about Inferno is this is a city you can remake yourself in. Your past doesn't matter. What matters is how you treat people in the present. That's gonna determine your future.
I've been remade a few times. Doesn't scare me.
That what happened to your face?
Believe it or not, I got hit in the head by a hammer. Just decided to keep it.
I can believe it. I believe you're the type of guy that pisses a lot of people off.
I have had that effect. Yes.
So you're here to make good with the bears. By kissing my boots and doing whatever I tell you. What else are you here for, Ash?
Have a good time, if that's not apparent. I like being a
You're gonna
vampire.
take other people's bikes for a joyride too? That your definition of a good time?
In my defense, I thought it was someone else's. Little bit of luck of fate.
Someone else's, huh? You know why I keep Moxie idling when I just have to duck in to grab something?
Probably because most people are not as foolish as I was.
Exactly. Everyone in Inferno knows that that's my fucking bike. But you know, I know what it's like to be new somewhere. We all started somewhere. I'm not an unreasonable woman, Ash. I'm willing to let bygones be bygones as long as they're rectified, but here's the thing. And she takes a step forward toward you, lumbering over you like multiple heads taller than you. Shadow falls over you. You say you're just looking out for your own. So am I. What's the cost of that to you? You gonna throw other people's loved ones under the bus just so your mouths are fed?
I don't want to make more enemies. I got plenty of them. What I want is to have a place here where I can conduct my business without stepping on other people's toes. That's all.
Zinon, it's time to roll to reduce your exposure here. So this is a downtime activity. When you wish to reduce your coterie's exposure, say how you go about making amends, hiding evidence, or intimidating the waggiest tongues. We've already seen what you've done here. We're going to see how effective it is. Then make an action roll. What skill would you like to use?
Zinon is working very hard, I think, to charm his way through the situation. So I'm going to say probably consort.
Consort, socializing. Love it. So how many pips do you have in consort?
1.
1 pip. I'm going to say your position here is risky. It's risky. Your effect will be standard. So roll 1d6.
That's a 5.
Okay, so a 4 or a 5 means you get to reduce your coterie's exposure by 2. Yay! Good job. What are you guys at now?
2.
2. Okay. All right. That's like a manageable amount of exposure.
Yeah.
Sure. So Zinon, as Anugata's arms are crossed looking down at you, you seem that she's a little mollified, a little satisfied with what you've said. It seems that you are authentically trying to make good here, and everything you've said hasn't pinged any red flags for her. She's probing you, and you're holding your own, and you're being fairly honest here. All right. Fine. Now get in the kitchen and start washing some dishes.
Oh, that's all? I can do that.
You haven't seen these dishes.
Alright.
Lumiera!
And
We got to Inferno University. It is a sprawling expanse of green in the heart of historic Inferno, filled with old buildings that boast Gothic stone decor and huge vaulted windows reminiscent of cathedrals. Outside of these buildings, the green bustles with students coming and going from night classes. Students, including you, Lumiera. Lumiera, as always, you're late. 15 minutes late to be exact. It took a long time to get here, and there was a lot of traffic to get to your psych lecture, which takes place in one of these gorgeously designed ancient buildings. But you've got no time to appreciate the architecture here. In fact, you have no time at all. So tell me, how do you bustle across the green into the building and into the lecture hall?
I think it's very similar to Lumiera rushing to Artemis's office right before she gets a new Mayday mission. It's just hauling ass in the most polite, upstanding way, just perfect posture, booking it right through, doing like the little ADHD turns like around people, like just kidding corners, but like not exactly, just sharp turns directly into the building.
You book it into the building, turns. Beautiful architecture. You see vaulted ceilings, like statues. Everything looks ancient and gorgeous. None of that matters right now. You are heading toward the little ping, the map on your phone that tells you where your lecture hall is, and then you find the doors. Do you also, just like with Artemis, like gather yourself?
Oh,
like,
absolutely. Yeah, I have to stop. I have to straighten myself up, and then quietly as possible, as quiet as I can, open the door and try to like slide in and close it as quietly as possible.
The instant you start to open the door, you hear a loudest hinges. This place is old and they have not WD-40'd these hinges in a long time. And these doors are so noisy. They're ancient, old, heavy oak doors, so they make a lot of noise when you kind of bang them open. And you step into a Colosseum-style lecture hall. So they're tiered all the way down to a stage. There's no fewer than 200 students sitting in these elevated seats that trickle down to the very bottom. And as soon as the doors open with that horrific screech, every single one of those 200 pairs of eyes tears away from the in the middle of her sentence professor and fixes onto you. The professor cuts herself off in the middle of her sentence and glances over at you as well. You see an older black woman in a manual wheelchair. She is wearing a tailored suit jacket with elegant silver embroidery. Her eyes are dark, they're vivid, they're edging on maroon, and a pearl necklace adorns her collarbones, contrasting against her incredibly dark skin. And these long black locks travel all the way down to her waist and is pulled up into a half bun at the top of her head. This woman, this professor, is a vampire. So are about a quarter of the students in this lecture hall. You remember the professor's name from your calendar alert, a Toyin Ifueko. Professor Ifueko raises a perfectly manicured eyebrow in your direction and says in a voice that could cut steel, "Ah, Lumiera Nova, was it?"
Lumiera just stands there at the top of, in the back of the class, eyes wide as saucers, like looking almost like a fish, like her mouth opens to say something and then just immediately shuts back and does it a few times before, my most sincerest apologies.
Glad you could join us. 16 minutes and 2 seconds tardy. Have a seat and see me after class.
Lumiera immediately sits down in an available seat.
Yep, in the very back.
In the
right,
very back of the classroom.
Bam,
just
sit.
sits down.
As you find your seat amidst the now whispering students, people are like looking back over their shoulders to kind of gawk at you. Just a sea of faces looking and staring and whispering, which is every socially anxious person's worst fucking nightmare.
Puts her head down, starts taking notes.
Yep. The professor turns her light brown gaze back toward the class, and thankfully they instantly shush. They stop talking. And Professor Ifueko says, as I was saying, the warrior poet Simran Ju of the 5th century opined, revenge is the fool's trophy, a catalyst only for destruction and malaise. But this could not be further from the truth. These past few weeks, I've given you all readings on a topic that connects our psychology with the world around us. Instinct. When we open ourselves to the neurotissue of lived experience, we learn that revenge is not merely a fool's trophy. Applied forcefully and intentionally, vengeance can be a powerful method for enacting change. Our literature students among us might remind us that revenge has many names: justice, closure, catharsis. We cannot moralize vengeance in simple strokes of black and white. Like hunger, thirst, and survival, vengeance is an instinct we must engage with to understand ourselves and ultimately each other. Like any other aspect of human psychology, our drive for vengeance is something we should seek to understand, not praise or condemn without nuance. And how do we seek to understand? And at that, the entire lecture hall chimes in with a single word: context. Lumiera, do you also chime in?
Of course. I did the reading.
Love this for you! Professor Ifueko smiles, and her near maroon eyes flash like chips of clouded blood as she speaks next. That's right. Context. The destruction and malaise that Zhu discusses comes not from the isolated act of or desire for vengeance itself, but from the context of his experiences and positionality, in his case, within the highly stratified monarchic feudal city-state society of 5th century Inferno. Our psychological need for justice, for closure, for catharsis is as natural as singing is to a shrike. However, as with any other part of our lived experience, we should inform our desires for vengeance within the context of the past and within our desires for the future. Lumiera, the next 90 minutes pass without much friction, thankfully. You sit, you attend the lecture, you take notes, and you learn. In fact, you learn quite a lot about the psychology of revenge, common myths, recent scientific studies, critical approaches to interrogating this subject. As you attend this lecture in a world you barely know, what memory springs to the surface of your mind?
I think I think Lumiera is taken back to her days training at Trans before she graduated. Yeah, I think it more specifically, it takes her back to her first class in therapeutics. Like where she finally was starting to pick at and find her specific calling. And that thirst for knowledge that's also interladen with something that's highly intriguing to her, a topic that is calling to her in some wild and interesting way. It's a reminder of back when things were good, or at least good for the time being.
It is then and only then that you are torn from your reverie. You can hear Professor Ifueko's voice ringing through the hall. We are approaching time here, scholars, so I will leave you with your next assignment. 3,000 words about the functions of revenge in the context of applied psychology by next Friday. If you need an extension, email me at least 24 hours in advance, otherwise no excuses. You are all dismissed. Except Miss Nova. Come.
Lumiera just packs up her book and her notebook and slides out of her chair, making her way down to the front of the class, not making eye contact, keeping her eyes directly on the floor in front of her.
Thankfully, the entire lecture hall scatters, so your walk of shame down to the bottom is kind of muddled within everyone gathering up their books, sliding laptops back into laptop bags, talking to each other, shooting the shit, and filtering out of the lecture hall. By the time you reach the bottom of the lecture hall, about half of the lecture has already emptied out, and you see Professor Ifueko gathering some of her notes from behind a low table that acts as her podium. And when she senses you approach, she looks up with those almost maroon eyes and an inscrutable expression on her face. She works as she talks, packing things up into her own book bags. Lumiera Nova, that's the first time you've been late this semester.
My deepest, again, and most sincerest apologies, Professor. There was something that came up prior to class with some of my family.
It would appear so. Not just your family, but yourself. The last time you were here, Miss Nova, you weren't a vampire.
I beg your pardon?
At this point, enough of the lecture hall has filtered out that it's just the two of you and a few stragglers, and she's speaking quietly but casually enough that no one else pricks their ears and turns their heads in your direction. This entire semester, Miss Nova, you've been hiding from me, in the middle of the pack here. Your essays have been adequate, if lacking passion. Adequate, yes. A's, of course, but not A+. But now you've come in late, and you've come alive, in a sense of the word, excusing my puerile verbal gymnastics here. We both know we're not strictly alive.
Of course. Like I said, a lot of things have arose since we've last seen each other. I will make sure nothing will stand in the way of my education again. I hate to be an interruption to your class. It's one of my favorites.
You were an interruption, but a welcome one. Miss Nova, the entire city is buzzing about you and your family. It has not escaped my notice. Just buzzing. Whether it's good or bad remains to be seen, and of course exists within the context of who's saying it's good and bad. But I have heard word of the young woman who saved the littlest spider from certain doom. You.
I was just in the right place at the right time.
Time will tell. Who are you, Miss Nova?
I'm Lumiera Nova. I'm a grad student here studying pre-med. I'm not sure what else you expected.
Pre-med, the healing arts. Is that your calling? Your passion?
One could say.
One could say. Is that why you saved the littlest spider? Your calling as a healer to do no harm.
Like I said, right place, right time.
Right place, right time. I'm not sure I believe that, Miss Nova. Well, the right place, right time I do believe. Your passion for the healing arts? I'm not sold.
Are you questioning my skills?
No. I'm questioning your passion. I'm questioning your assertion that it is your calling.
Well, I certainly wouldn't be in this class if I didn't.
Of course not. But there are many things many of us do simply because we are expected to do them.
Are you saying that higher education is what I'm expected of doing? Therefore, that's
Is
why
it?
I want to do it?
Is it?
No. I desire knowledge. I don't believe learning stops once you reach a certain age. Every day you wake up, every day is a gift. You take that, it is your duty to learn more. Why wouldn't you, if given the opportunity?
I completely agree with you, Miss Nova. Learning and knowledge is a lifelong journey. But what we choose to learn and why we learn are just as important as the masks we put on. And I think you are wearing a mask with me, Miss Nova.
Well, Professor Ifueko, if I'm wearing a mask, pray tell, what do you think it is?
I think you are wearing the mask of someone you think you should be. There are pressures on you. There are pressures on all of us, of course, but there are pressures on you, Miss Nova, and there is something deeper inside of you, is there not?
Why wouldn't there be? And Lumiera is, for what it's worth, she was very cool and calm and collected in the beginning. But the more she pulls, the more thread she pulls at from Lumiera's story, the more it starts to unravel just a bit.
Mm-hmm.
And she starts to get uneasy on her feet, clicking her pocket watch, fidgeting.
And Professor Ifueko has finished packing all her things up into her bag. She wheels herself around the table, so she's looking at you, and there's only a foot or two of distance between the two of you. She has a very curious look on her face, like a fox that's seen a rabbit in the middle of a dense wood and isn't sure if it wants to snap it up, or play with it, or do something else, something that you haven't quite figured out yet. And Professor Ifueko says, Miss Nova, I know what it's like to force oneself to be someone else, just to make someone else or something else happy or satisfied. I spent much of my misguided youth trying to please other people, and stifling that spark within me that I always knew was there but never always had the name for. But now I know who I am. And I have been, thankfully, unapologetically myself for many long years. It is a wonderful thing to get to be who you are.
Lumiera looks at her for a very long time. Almost an uncomfortable silence sits between them for quite a bit. Lumiera's body posture kind of slackens a bit. Well, if you're done psychoanalyzing me and my purpose, maybe it's time for you. It
Time
can
for
go
me.
both ways.
To be
Oh.
psychoanalyzed by you, Miss Nova. You must excuse my tendencies. As the chair of the psychology department, I do sometimes slip into old habits.
Yeah. Like the ones where you try to tell someone that you very barely know what it is about them.
I do not tell people who they are, I simply observe.
Mm.
I take information that is presented to me and I deduce.
I've
do not
presented
think.
this information.
There are more ways than one to present information. The micro-expressions of your face, for one. The way you hold yourself, the way you stiffened when I mentioned there was something deeper. The way you seemed to lean in when I told you, shared with you an intimate part of my own backstory.
My apologies, Professor. Sometimes I lash out when there are things that I don't understand.
Oh, no, Miss Nova. No apology is necessary. And I know how I can come off. Some students are rather frightened of me. They're intimidated by my ability to see, to understand, to observe. But I have a feeling you know what that's like, don't you, Miss Nova? Because you, I can tell, now that you've come alive, you have a frighteningly intelligent mind, don't you? A sharp one.
Not to toot my own horn.
And when she laughs and smiles, you see those sharpened fangs glimmering like an assassin's blade. You have questions for me, I assume.
A plethora.
Please, ask away. And Lumiera, as you dig deep for those questions, we pan out of this lecture hall. We hold on that almost full moon. And when we pan back down again, in the bloody beating heart of the city, we see the Temple of Inferno. It is a towering pagoda with 5 tiled roofs of glazed ceramic. The roof on the bottom is the largest and broadest, fanning out like a dragon's frill, supported by a dozen red painted pillars. A soaring minaret juts from the top of this temple, complete with a wooden balcony for holy folk to sound the call to prayer. The entire temple sits upon a raised stone dais, dozens of feet across. At this late hour, only a few faithful devotees traffic in and out of this pagoda, clutching prayer beads, lighting incense in giant bronze censers, and bowing shaved heads in each of the 4 directions. We push in on you, Sayer, striding into this pagoda beside Ying He. The ground floor is massive and circular, with a vaulted ceiling and a magnificent shrine in the center, filled with golden carvings of various divine likenesses, along with offerings of fruits, coins, and prayer papers. A few monks attend to this shrine, garbed in simple robes of rich white, deep black, and blood red. Other devotees pray in front of various altars, their eyes closed and fingers steepled, but one person stands out to both of you. They are currently kneeling in front of the largest shrine here, their long black hair flowing freely down their back. They wear the colors of a monk, but their robes are slimmer, more modern, similar to the street-style hanfu that Ying He is wearing. A black huadian glimmers against light brown skin, and although their eyes are closed while they pray, the ghost of a smile flickers at their lips the entire time. And they look extremely young. They are definitely the youngest monk here. Most certainly, maybe even younger than the two of you, early 20s at most. A service dog sits attentively beside them, wearing a harness of white, black, and red. It's a large mutt. Its brown fur is flecked with black and white, and an ear kind of flicks in your direction as you enter, but its muzzle stays fixed in its owner's direction. Sayir, aside from the two of you, there's only one other vampire in this entire shrine. This person. Yinghe pauses at the threshold of the temple, taking all of the sin, smelling the incense. So, here we are.
Here we are indeed. Sayir, throughout the entire walk here, I believe the walk with Yinghe has been silent.
Yep.
He is quietly, between the silence, Sayir's mind has been preoccupied with Zainan's words about acting on feelings he knows exists, his concern about Yinghe's in access to their abilities they've known their whole life. He's worried about them, and he wants to be there for them. And that instinct takes over. And as he notices the silence between us, they wonder to themselves, wow, I guess I must have really upset them. And I need to make amends. And the best way Sayir knows how to make amends is to show up. So before we cross the threshold, Sayir will take note of any sort of like entrance rituals or like general must-dos as we enter into the sacred space. And one thing that he will do anyway is take his long hair and tie it up into a bun within his own hair that sits on top of his head to keep his hair out of the way and more neat, respectful. And as he does so, he turns over to the person and says to Yinghe in a quiet, hushed tone, them, like us.
I can tell they're also a vampire. Maybe they can lead us to the Abbot.
I'll go ask. And Sayir starts approaching. He mostly pays attention to not only the body language of the person, but also the body language of their service dog. He has seen other members of Trans who also have companion animals who aid them in their day-to-day tasks for whatever alert or whatever function that they work in. And so Sayir looks towards the dog, looks towards this person, and waits for a moment for when their task of prayer or of meditation is complete, he is there and he is ready to announce himself.
You stand a respectful distance, but close enough to signal to this person that you want to talk to them as they finish their ritual here. And it will take a long time, Sayir. It will take quite some time. They are deep in some sort of prayer. You see their lips moving against their palms, but you can't catch the words coming out. Their dog is completely relaxed, looks at you as you draw closer, but then kind of looks away disinterestedly.
That's fair.
Is at attention for their owner.
And Sayir waits patiently, heeding the warning that Rhododendron had given him not that long ago about being more respectful, especially in a space which has some level of orthodoxy. But in the respectful distance, he attempts to talk to Yinghe.
Yeah, Yinghe has drawn up next to you as you were like, I'm gonna talk to this person, and then you stop and you don't because you gave them space. So Yinghe draws up next to you and says, Are we gonna talk to them, or?
don't really want to interrupt them in the middle of meditation or prayer.
Oh, right.
I-
Maybe I,
I mean-
shouldn't either. Should we just stay here? I feel like they can hear us.
Yeah, I think so too. And Sayer like pauses, like there's this kind of like pregnant, awkward pause that sits in the air for a little while before he just says, "What happened to your shadows?"
Well, I still cast a shadow, obviously. And I still feel connected to my shadow and the shadows here, but they don't move. They don't speak like I'm used to. It's just different. It feels more limited.
Like you're being cut off?
Maybe. Or maybe the magic. And they like whisper that to you. Of this place is just lesser than the one on Zhiguang.
Sayer softens a little bit, and he, like, in this communication, and as Yinghe whispers, he leans even lower, so they don't have to, like, harsh whisper so harshly towards his ear. He leans down closer to them, and he says, I've been feeling the same thing with my omens.
You have? Have you received any omens since you've been here?
No. None.
I see.
I
don't
feel
like
it
this.
just at the periphery, like it's behind some wall. But I can't do anything about it. Spent all my life not wanting to deal with omens, and yet here I am wanting to hear them. Ironic, isn't it?
I can relate. I spent a really, really long time hating myself for being able to connect with shadows the way I do because people were scared of it. But now I miss it. It's a part of me. And I've never been able to not go home when I want to, or step into shadow and disappear. It's, I don't know, like a cloak that makes me feel safe, and I don't have it here. It's frightening.
I know. And Sayer says that not as an indication of him knowing that Yinghe is afraid, but in a way of acknowledging that he too is afraid. And I think that is a tiny thing that slips out unintentionally from Sayer, as his guard is down around Yinghe. And hearing that Yinghe can't go back, he stiffens a little bit. Do you want to? Go home, I mean. Do you regret coming here?
No, I don't. I would just obviously like to have the option to go home whenever I wanted to. And I don't regret coming here. But, Sarah, there's something I've been meaning to talk to you about. A stag and a crane walk through the wood together. And this person slowly rises, their modern robes rippling silently as they do one last bow toward the shrine, and they turn to face the two of you. You see soft black eyes brimming with warmth. Greetings.
Hello. I'm sorry to interrupt your prayer.
No interruptions, and you did not. I was able to finish my sutra.
We were hoping we could speak to you about magic. We were recommended to seek our answers here when we visited House Drakar.
House Drakar. And they sent you into the House of the Serpent. I see. We were wondering if you would be so kind as to point us in the direction of the abbot? You are looking at them.
Sayre does like narrow his brow in a surprised fashion. He was not expecting this person to be an abbot, maybe I mean, they clearly are devoted to their work, maybe an apprentice to the abbot, but not the abbot themselves. And he just says, sorry? What?
I am Tsing, the abbot of House Ula.
Oh.
Oh. I think you and Yinka say that at the same time. Yinka looks to the side where we see like older monks with shaved heads and like humble robes, and then back at Tsing, who has these like this like modern streetwear. They don't have a shaved head. They're kind of just like looking at you and smiling vaguely.
That works out. Hello, Abbot. Then
Hello.
it seems that fate has brought us together.
It does seem that fate has done so. Fate is interesting in that way. Nothing is ever a coincidence.
And Sayre in the back of his mind says it's certainly in his mind's eye, it's just like it certainly feels that way because that's been his whole experience in Inferno thus far. And he like steps forward with Yinghe and says, We've had connections to something greater, and it feels like we don't anymore. And we don't know if that's something you'd know something about, or... It doesn't seem like magic is something folks talk about, I suppose is what I'm trying to say.
Magic. Now that's an interesting concept, Sayre. You had not introduced yourself.
Yeah. And Sayre's just like, I didn't... How did you know my name?
Word travels fast here in Inferno. Many people whispering about what happened at the bloodbath last night.
Oh.
Or maybe I'm psychic.
Are
Just
you?
kidding. Well, speaking of telepathy, who is to say what's magic and what's not, don't you think? I've read fascinating and entertaining stories of fiction about dragons breathing fire and mages parting rivers. Of course, no such feats are possible in our mundane little world. Sayre, as the abbot speaks, their words resonate with your experiences specifically on Earth. The mission briefing for Earth mentioned it was a low magic world, and sure enough, you weren't able to explode stuff or consume or destroy the way you were used to back at Trans. And how you felt on Earth starting to mirror and resonate with how you feel here in Inferno. Artemis had even mentioned that this too was a low magic world. And until very recently, you didn't have a name for the magic that dwelled within you. Now you do. Doom. In the Wild Sea, Doom came to you as fire, hot and blue, roiling out of your body in uncontrollable waves. In the City of Heaven, Doom came to you as hunger, insatiable and cruel, feasting your fangs on the flesh of a god. Here, you're not sure what Doom is, at least not yet. The few times you've attempted to wield it haven't worked, or have backfired, because you haven't figured out the proper way to call on it here. Your magic, your Doom, works differently. Differently, that's what Yinghe has been saying this whole time, it works differently. Maybe you just need to figure out how.
Sayre kind of ponders and actually leans a little more into his experiences on Earth a little bit. It was a low magic world, but Doom did happen. Sayre listened to a part of himself, and he opened a door. And that door opened other doors, other portals, other places. and
Kimani got away.
caused everything that yes, Kimani, yes, so astute, Connie. Yes, Kimani got away, and we
Who's
failed
Connie? I'm the
that
voice of
mission.
God.
And as Sayer lingers on that, then he just says, "So how do House Ula look at magic then? At the way the world functions? How does your devotion manifest here?"
Well, perhaps our world isn't as mundane as we think. After all, the three of us here are living proof that something out there exists, or rather, we are unliving proof. We may not be able to breathe fire or part rivers, but we can perform extraordinary feats. As vampires, we are stronger, faster, more perceptive than our mortal bedfellows. We are also each endowed with a dark gift. Some of us can shrug off blows that would kill a fellow undead. Others can read minds or bend wills. Some of us think of our vampirism as a curse. And indeed, in many ways, it is. It is a curse of the blood that robs us of our mortality and inflicts a never-ending thirst upon our faculties. But in many other ways, our vampirism is a blessing. I like to think of it as both. Well, no matter your take on this, Sayer, you cannot adequately access your gifts if you are thirsty. That is why we must drink blood. Any living blood will do, unless your dark gift makes you crave the blood of your fellow undead. But the best
can do that?
kind of blood... Yes, of course it can. Why ever not?
Oh,
It can do
okay.
many things. Many things indeed. I'm sure it's able to do things that I've not even heard of yet. Regardless, the most satiating type of blood is that which suits your particular proclivities. You see, some undead enjoy hot, athletic, risk-taking blood. Others enjoy taking from the devout or the faithful. Still others enjoy the blood of artists, creatives, imaginaries. Takes a little experimenting to figure out your blood type, but I've learned that deep down, we all know.
Oh. And Sayer turns to Yinghe to see how Yinghe is reacting to all of this.
Yinghe is nodding very intently. You get the feeling they're also realizing that their magic, because it's working differently here, things are sliding into place and they almost look relieved. Like they have an answer for how they can make their magic flare up again. They're nodding intensely. I see. Thank you, Abbot. That is very helpful. You're welcome.
So it is just trial and error then, Abbot? You just...
A little bit of this, a little bit of that.
Right. And Sayer starts mapping in his little head about all the different hunts he needs to go with Yinghe to like just narrow down what the blood type is. And he like nods to himself, making this plan in his head. You said that we vampires do know it deep inside. Is that instinct, I suppose?
Yes. Yes, of course. Deep down inside, we all know what really makes our blood run. It might take some experimenting, but I don't think it's a good idea to try to lie to ourselves about what we prefer. There is a difference between want and need.
All right. And he turns to Yinghe and is like, all right, I think we have a path forward.
I think so too. Thank you again, Abbot. We had a few other questions. And he glances at you sideways because now it's time for politicking and they're not really sure where to go.
Yinghe sees Sayer and Sayer like I think forgot that we were here for another thing and to talk about politics. And he looks at Yinghe like and then realizes what that eye look is for. He goes, yes. Abbot, thank you for your guidance and help.
Of course.
Ying, and I think Sayer was about to say, my friend Yinghe and I have a path forward. But we have some other questions about this place, Inferno, and the Crimson Tapestry.
Please ask away. I am an open book.
Sayer looks around. How secluded are we?
Well, it is a large temple, and your words have... The abbot has not been trying to whisper. When they've talked about vampirism and gifts, like, their words echo out, but none of the monks or the devotees here seem surprised at all. They just continue going about their work.
Would this be an appropriate place to speak in private, Abbot?
Of course.
All right. We are curious about the history of Lanius and Thrakar. We know that House Ula is old and ancient. Perhaps you could illuminate more about this story of mutual hatred and betrayal.
It's a very curious question that you're asking me, little dear. Especially since you helped your friends save the second life, rather, of the littlest spider. I would assume that you and House Thrakar would be on good terms, and that they would have told you the truth of the feud between Lanius and Thrakar. Are you not satisfied with the truth?
Just curious if there's more that is hidden. Not intentionally, perhaps. Sometimes anger, when left to fester, clouds
Alternate
one's
perspectives.
perspective.
Yes, anger, like all emotion, can cloud our judgment. Here's what I will say about the tragedy of the Shrike and the spider. These are two noble houses, both great and wonderful. But I'm afraid that their feud goes back longer than even I myself have been alive for. Well, alive twice for. The origins, the true origins of why they despise each other so, is lost to time. Each of the heads of each household has their particular perspective on what they think happened. But it is one thing to pass a story down to your children, and another thing to have it written down in a history book, which unfortunately, it never was. What really matters is that they don't like each other. They never have, and I don't think they ever will. It's fate's will.
Sayer, chews on that for a little bit before following up with, understood. How does House Ula view this antagonism between the two houses, and how does that affect your way of moving about the Crimson Tapestry around Inferno?
My responsibility as the Abbot is to serve as a spiritual guide for mortals and undead alike in Inferno. My greatest goal here is to simply preserve things as they are, as fate has intended. I do not crave power, nor gold, nor change, simply for things to remain in balance the way they should be, the way they always have been, and the way they always will be.
Alright. And Sayer kind of chews on that and turns over to Yinka. Do you have any questions, Yinka?
Yes, I do have a question, actually, Abbot. I hope you do not take this the wrong way. But I got the impression recently that maybe Thrakar and Ula don't love each other. Thoughts?
Sayer looks to Yinghe and is like nodding approvingly because he thought that was the best way that could come out.
And Ting Sing smiles and says, very perceptive and very straightforward, the both of you. You won't last long here at Inferno if you keep shooting that way. But your gut instinct is right. There is some bad blood, if you will pardon the pun, between House Trakar and House Ula. In fact, House Ula used to just be one person, myself, and I used to be a spider.
Oh.
Zynon, you have been washing dishes for hours and hours and hours, and you have not been allowed to use gloves. The hot, hot, hot water of the sink swarms your eyes. Steam and sweat beads on your cold, dead skin. Gross food. I won't get too descriptive about it, but it's gross and nasty and you gotta touch it. Orders go out, empty or partially empty plates come back in, and Anu, when you're not washing dishes, makes you sweep, makes you mop, makes you clean the counters, makes you scrub down stains. So what unenviable kitchen task do we find you in the midst of when we come back to you?
I think Zynon is actively scraping like an old like trying to get any of the residual oil that's cooked into the sides of a wok out. And he is,
That's
you know,
torture,
when it's really in there and he's
Yeah.
just working at it, but strangely he is smiling.
Yeah, you're grinning as you put like elbow grease in and you're just scrub, scrub, scrub. The water's going, that music is blasting. There's a lot of stuff happening right now, a lot of sensory information coming in at you, that it is quite a wonder that you're able to hear what happens next because it is quite loud. Staggering in to the Lazy Bear Pub and Grill is a fellow vampire, and they are breathing heavily. You don't see them, but you hear it. The door bangs open, you sense an undead presence come in, and groans of pain, some sort of thud as like a body hits a wall. I Sakti, Anu! And the music gets cut off immediately as Anu, who was doing another chore somewhere else in the kitchen, presses pause on the playlist and like bustles out of the kitchen. Do you follow? Or do you keep doing your task?
Yeah, I think Zynon brings the wok with him, like dripping water as he goes. Just kind of like, yes, I'm still working, not at all being very nosy. And as he does, he's also, again, limping. And like, it's not quiet. It's not subtle.
And thankfully, no one is paying any attention to you as all eyes are fixed on this newcomer that just came in. Slumped against a wall of the diner, you see a 30-something-year-old vampire. She is grabbing onto one of her arms with the other, steadying it because it is bent in an unnatural direction, and her undead blood is staining the entire sleeve. She's like whimpering in pain. Something was able to break the arm of a vampire. More than that, gash it open. And the woman that had been in the booth smoking cigarettes this whole time, who had ignored you when you came in, she springs into action. She is no longer in the booth. She immediately has an arm around this person and is like pulling her into the booth. Everyone else in this diner like gets the fuck out. At one look from this woman's eyes, they get the fuck out. So it's just you, Anu, this woman, and this injured vampire. And this injured vampire is saying, I'm sorry, Zakti, I got all fucked up for no reason, really. I just didn't... my own damn fault. Calm down, Kelliga. Arm. Show it to me. And this person, Kelliga, painfully places their arm forward as this other woman, Sakti, which you recall was the name of the mogul, peels, like rips that ruptured sleeve away to reveal like a completely broken arm, bone showing, but more than that, you see huge bite marks around the entire like rotator cuff down to the elbow, and it even like mashes into her pectoral, like something with a huge mouth the size of like a fucking truck.
Zynon sees all this, stops scrubbing. He was only kind of scrubbing by the time he got there, but two things distract him. One, seeing Sakti work and all of the actual healing attempt, pulling away all of the damage and to get a good look at the injury, but also the air smells more delicious than any food that's been in here the moment that Caliga enters. And his mouth is almost watering, and that hunger begins to rise in him as he can smell the blood of another vampire.
Mm-hmm. As you stand watching that hunger and thirst rising in you, Sakti, very calmly, like assessing this broken limb, barks out, "Anu, the usual." And Anu just nods and quickly gets back into the kitchen and starts making something. As she's doing that, Sakti, you see, like, takes the cigarette out of her mouth and puts it into Kelliga's, and says, "Need anything else to bite down on?" "No. Do it. Just fucking do it." Crunch! As Sakti just cracks the bone back in place.
Zynon is taken back to another life, seeing a similar scene just for a flash. People sitting around in a barn, setting a bone, and he's back in this diner.
There's a horrific sound as this injured vampire wails and grunts and growls. Ugh! Now tears, blood tears, are beading at the corners of her eyes from just the sheer pain of it. She looks like she's about to pass out. But then Anu comes out from around the kitchen and places two things down in front of this injured vampire. One of them is a stein of hot, piping hot blood, like a beer stein, but it's full of crimson liquid. And the other is a burger, as far as you can tell, but the patty on the inside is raw, completely raw, and there's been something done with it. It smells really good to you, unlike human food, which just kind of smells like ash. And immediately this vampire starts just, they like completely chug the blood and they slam it down and they start tearing into this burger. As Sakti, you notice, pulls out like a first aid kit and starts like attending to their wounds. As they do, Kelliga says, "So I guess rumors of a hungry wolf aren't just rumors. They came out of nowhere. I don't think they were in their right mind. I think they were just hungry. They didn't do this on purpose. My own damn fault. I wanted to find out more, so I stayed longer than I should have, and It's okay, Caliga. Just calm down. We'll learn more about this later. For now, just focus on healing." Okay. And they stop talking. They like just keep eating and drinking.
As Zynon watches this, and he hears the hungry wolf, a predator, something hungry enough to attack a vampire, he doesn't realize where it comes from, but he looks down and a bullet falls onto the ground. And he looks down at it confused.
The clinking of this bullet draws Sakti's attention. She has set the bone, and before your very eyes, as soon as that like empty stein clatters back down, you see the flesh start to knit itself back up again. This vampiric healing happening as blood kind of craters in like lava into cracked open earth, flesh flowing in, skin stitching back together. And Sakti raises those eyes, those sharp, intense, at first uninterested eyes, now glimmering with curiosity, looking back up at you and says, "This is what it means to take care of our own, Zynon Ash. That's what the House of the Bear does. We watch out for our den."
Zynon nods quietly. There's a familiarity. He's never met Sakti before. He's never been a bear. But there's a sense of home that he hasn't felt in a very long time in the way that Sakti talks about House Kuatun. And he just nods. Understood.
Anu. And Sakti jerks her head. Anu raises her eyebrows and opens her mouth as if she's about to argue, but at a look from Sakti, just closes her mouth, rummages around in the kitchen again, and when she comes back out, she has a smaller stein of blood for you. She hands it to you.
Zynon takes it, but looks kind of confused. But why?
And Sakti says, without looking at you, still tending to that wound, making sure Kaleg is okay, she says, "You might not be a bear, but you're helping us out right now. And if there's one thing bears are, it's hospitable. There are certain rules to being a host and rules to being a guest. No guest that walks into one of our restaurants, into one of our dens, is ever going to go hungry. Because the price of hunger..." And she trails off and just looks down and gestures at that wound still stitching up.
Yeah. Appreciating the gesture for more than just hospitality. The giving of a resource is a gesture that Zynon understands very profoundly. And the lone survivor of Kiseki takes the mug and drinks, grateful.
The blood touches your lips, and it spills down your throat. Lumiera. The professor looks up at you with curiosity, interest, and just a hint of challenge in her eyes. She doesn't want you to hold back, as she invites you to ask your questions. What is the first query that comes out of you?
What exactly is the relationship between House Huyen and House Rakar?
Swinging out of the gate now, are we? Well, here's what I can tell you, Miss Nova. Our interests are aligned.
How so?
House Drakar is interested in changing Inferno, uniting it, to my understanding. And you see, art and education are natural allies. Both myself and Willow are interested in progress. We are interested in creativity. We are interested in innovation. And I believe that by working together, we might get to places that a single house could not.
So like a united ticket front? Combining sources together for the betterment of the whole?
Yes, something like that. House Drakar is quite content on driving this innovation. Certain promises have been made about House Huyen's place in the new united Inferno.
More power than what all the knowledge in the world can already give?
Knowledge and power are one and the same. But by itself, knowledge accomplishes nothing. It is what you do with it that matters.
And what is it that you plan to do with it, Professor?
Create a world that has not yet been known. But right now, the way that Inferno currently works under the Crimson Tapestry, there are certain checks and balances that stifle that innovation.
So you want the freedom to choose, and the freedom to learn.
Precisely. Yes, exactly. Clever girl.
Lumiera kind of blushes at the soft stroke of her intellect, but that's something to unpack for a later date. And she just smiles. Well, I was personally recommended to you from Rhododendron. We're working together seems so frivol of a statement. It's more like I'm scratching their back and they scratch mine.
That is the foundation of all great alliances throughout history.
Fair
Mutually beneficial arrangements. There's quite a lot of literature on the psychology of that.
Much like the psychology of revenge.
Precisely. Alliances and vengeances are quite similar in a lot of ways. They are both dependent on another party. And they both produce cycles.
Cycles.
Yes, when it comes to vengeance, of course, it is cycles of destruction, rage, and pain if you allow that vengeance to consume you. Or, as we learned today during my lecture, if you apply it contextually and intentionally, it can help bring catharsis and usher in a new era. As for alliances, it is a mutually beneficial cycle. The more you help each other, the more the other is inclined to help you, so on and so forth. As humans and as vampires, we are instinctually motivated to be in community with each other. We are pack animals, one might say.
Yeah. A pack.
A pack, a house. Different names for the same thing.
Family. They all lie in together.
Precisely. Speaking of which, since you are scratching Rhododendron's back and Rhododendron is scratching yours, perhaps you could help me scratch my back here, and perhaps I could scratch yours as well.
Lumiera's eyes quirk at that. How so, Professor?
There is one specific kind of mutually beneficial arrangement that I believe will solidify the alliance between houses Huyen and Trakar. It is something I've been considering, a way to assure Trakar's promises, make sure they are not just dust in the wind.
Well, from what I've seen so far, Trakar is very diligent about keeping their promises, but I'll bite. What is it?
If you will be so kind, Miss Nova, I would appreciate you passing along this message to Rhododendron Trakar about that which House Huyen craves to solidify our bond. You see, I have a daughter, and I believe that she and the littlest spider should be wed. I would like our houses to be joined. And we're going to end the session there. Thank you all so much for tuning in so far. I've been Connie, your GM, and the proprietor of an arranged marriage. My pronouns are they, he, and she. I'm going to pass along introductions over to Valiant Dorian.
Oh, okay. Hi. Just let me pick my jaw off of the floor for a second. Hi everyone, I'm Valiant Dorian. I use his pronouns. You can find me all around the internet, Valiant Dorian, or at Otso Spirit Bear. Please enjoy that lovely treasure I just set you on. Tonight, I had the distinct pleasure of playing your messy boy Sayer, who uses he, they pronouns. He's trying his best. But on to the pop-up of the hour. Hey, little bear, how's it going?
Oh, you know, having a great time. Hi, everyone. I'm Kai. You can find me all over the internet as Estelle of Ibladris. And boy, did I have a fun time playing the bottom of Strike Team Nova, Mr. Zynon Esh.
That is exactly what you are.
You are correct, and you should say
Yes.
it louder.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, as he deserves. Sam.
Hello, everyone. I'm Sam Star once again, using she, they, and the occasional Fae pronouns. You can catch me all across the interwebs at Lust for Life X, more specifically on Blue Sky, because I am completely phasing out that other hell site. And yeah, I played Lumiera. Who doesn't love a hot professor? I know I do. Passing it along to our lovely special guest. Ha! Got it?
I thought you were going to pass it on to me. I forgot came back for the
Did you
introduction.
forget I'm here?
I forgot. I couldn't see. I
After
was like,
you
it's gonna be me.
dropped it, how could you do that? Oh gosh. Okay, hello everyone. My name is Abbot. I use any and all pronouns, and I am a TTRPG performer and producer. You can find me all over the internet at Lilith TTRPG. I am also specifically on Blue Sky the most right now. So if you like what I do, you should go follow me there because I've got a few shows kind of in my back pocket that are going to be coming out soon that you should keep your eye on. But yeah, it has been a pleasure to. I don't know what. A lot happened. A lot happened. I'm gonna let Connie take it.
It's a me, Connie, taking it. I hope.
Nope.
Stop! Anyway, thank you all so much for tuning into this deeply feral episode of the Chaos Protocol. If you're laughing, I'll see you in court. If you enjoyed what you saw here tonight, consider leaving us a positive review, joining the Discord server, or posting about us on social media. Not only does it help our creator brains when we're on the verge of burnout, which I constantly am, it also helps us continue to reach out to sponsors to make this work possible. If they see that people watch our stuff, they're going to want to throw money at us to keep making the stuff. That's how it works, I guess. Chaos is back for good. So join us next Saturday, January 18th at 8 p.m. US Eastern Time to find, for the next installment of Arc 3, maybe we'll finally discover what the hell that marriage proposal means. And what's happening with everyone else on their scenes. Werewolves? Anyway, stick around with the raid, and we will be here, right back here next week, same time, same place. Journey well, translators. Send your love to the raid.